Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Sabbath Collective, a community of people interested in celebrating the Sabbath and pursuing God through a Hebraic worldview of the Bible. So tonight, it is the Sabbath. It is Friday evening. It's the one day of the week that I absolutely know what day it is in our new world. We're going to be looking tonight at acceptance and hope in the new normal. In my conversations with people these days, hey Faith, great to see you, hon. Hey Nicole. So we have East Coast, we have West Coast, we have Canada, we have Costa Rica. Good to see everyone. We have New Jersey. Hey Sissy. Alexandra in New York. Good to see you, honey. Um, in my conversations with people, I'm hearing we just want things to go back to the way they were. But tonight, I actually want to challenge that old normal. Is the old normal really a good thing? I believe that one of the things this crisis has really shown us is the cracks in the foundation. Now, of course, most of us were aware those cracks were there, but it seems as the cracks have become so apparent that they really can no longer be ignored. And you either need to say, I'm just going to keep standing on this cracked foundation, or you're going to realize you're on sand and the rains are coming. We were living in our normal, and then, quote, out of nowhere, I'm saying that facetiously because it was anything but out of nowhere. We actually didn't heed the warnings or continue with preparation because our normalcy bias is to believe we are untouchable and nothing bad ever happens to us. So, predictably, this tiny virus brings the whole system to its knees and exposes what's lying underneath. Dr. Martin Luther King's words, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, gives me hope that this is where we're going, flowing with that bend towards justice. This coronavirus, in some ways, is iconoclastic. It reveals and smashes our most cherished cultural idols. Things that were actually there all along, but we didn't really want to deal with the reality of them. So, hey Jules, good to see you. Hey my niece, Tanya, good to see you, honey. Hey Phoebe, great to have you join us. So I want to suggest it's not about getting back to normal. It's about accepting that we actually don't want to ever go back to what we call normal. In fact, we want to blow up the past normal and have hope in a new normal. But to get to that place of hope in this unpredictable new normal, first we have to go through a kind of acceptance of a sense of loss that we all feel from our predictable past. Because even when our predictable past is really crappy, we kind of always pick the devil we know, right? So all of us are going through right now this sense of loss because all of us kind of feel in our heart that things are changing and there's going to be things that we'll never have again. In Judaism, there's the practice of Shiva after the death of a loved one. So for the first 7 days after the burial, a person does not leave the house, does not bathe, does not have sex, or get on with business as usual. And mourners are permitted to feel as if life has stopped, and they stop with it. Now that sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Kind of how we are right now. Then after that 7-day period of mourning, another period takes over, which is the period of Shiloshim, which continues for a total of 30 days after the burial. Hey, Alicia from New Zealand. Good to see you, honey. Shabbat Shalom. So both Shiva, which is where you sit for 7 days, don't go out, don't bathe, just act as if the whole world has stopped, and Shiloshim, slow down reality for a mourner. It allows the mourner time to become the new person they will have to be in this loss. 7 days. Now, the number of what? That's a number of completion, right? 7 days. And 30 days, which sages connect to the lunar cycles that the Jewish calendar is based on. Both the 7 and the 30 symbolize a full cycle. And this process begins indoors, right? For that first 7 days, it begins hidden away, almost in darkness. But with the passing of time, the light returns in the fullness of the cycle. So if you look at it like this, it's the normal, which is light, and then the tragedy happens, and the morning begins, and now it's darkness. But then as this 30 days continues, it goes to gradual light again. The number 30, hey Diana, good to see you, hon. The number 30, hey Rebecca, Shabbat Shalom. Hey Carol, great to have you join us. Randall, good to see you. So the number 30 in this process of mourning, Shaloshim, also is a number for fullness of maturity. And it's the number that suggests that a person is now ready to go into one's purpose. So this intentional grieving time is a time to accept and prepare for a different life. Now, wow, we can really apply this to where we're at right now, right? It isn't that we stop mourning after the Shaloshim has passed, after that 30 days has passed. Rather, the end of Shaloshim marks the beginning of living a new normal for the mourner. So you don't as much move past as move through and become a new person. During this time, it's almost like you're in between the trapeze bars. You know that parable that people often tell. You've let go of the one you were swinging on, and you're reaching for that new one, but you haven't quite grasped it yet. And so you're literally at that place in between. You've let go of the old, you're grasping for the new, but you haven't gotten it yet. But you've definitely let go of the former. Now, most of you know that, hey, Rai, good to see you, hon, in Taiwan. Great to see you and great to have you with us. So again, this mirrors, as far as what we see in the Hebrew grieving process, very much mirrors what a lot of us are going through right now. Most of you are familiar with the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, right? I think all of us have read and heard this before. And they are actually non-linear. Hey, Evelyn, good to see you. They're actually non-linear. It's not like a line, A, B, C, D. It's circular. And we don't hurry and get through one and move to the other. We need to first be willing to go through this painful process of acknowledging that things will not, and in fact, things should not, go back to normal. And I want you to know this, comparisons have no place in grief. You shouldn't try to do comparative grief and say to yourself, well, other people have it worse than I do, so I shouldn't be grieving right now. You know what? That didn't work when your mom told you to eat up all your food because there's kids starving in the world, did it? It doesn't make you thankful, not while you're comparing yourself to other people. Grief is grief. And you can express gratitude for what you have, but that doesn't take away the grief and the loss that we're all feeling. It actually supports the process when you allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. We all need to find this expression of emotions we're feeling. Our heart knows what's up, and it's speaking to us now. Our minds may not want to cooperate, so therefore we begin to doubt ourselves. In times of unpredictability, you cannot listen and trust your inner voice until you stop judging it. You cannot trust your own inner voice until you stop judging it. So again, agreed, Rebecca, it is dangerous to compare ourselves. Stop criticizing yourself. Give voice to the emotions that you're feeling right now. So I want to quickly go through these 5 stages of grief and kind of imprint ourselves in them and see where we're at. And maybe we feel 1, and maybe we feel 2, and maybe we feel all of it. And again, it's very much a cyclical situation. It's not linear. It's very much where we go in a circle and we can bounce all over. It's why I kind of like all the lines, because they go all over the place. You don't get through one stage and then come back and, okay, now we're done that stage. I don't have to go through it again. There's denial and isolation. There's anger. There's depression. There's bargaining. There's acceptance. So again, let's briefly go through them tonight, and we can talk about where we're at in this process. And if you find yourself at one of them, give me the thumbs up and let me know how you're feeling in it. Denial. Isaiah 6:9 says, he said, go and tell this people. This is God speaking to Isaiah, telling Isaiah to go and tell the people. Yes, you hear, but you don't understand. You certainly see, but you don't get the point. Hello. So here's the Lord telling Isaiah, tell the people that you're hearing, but you don't understand. You're seeing, but you're not getting the point. And this is what denial is. And by the way, may I say that our country is, in a very large way, living in this place of denial. We have a normalcy-based bias, like what I talked about in the very beginning. And that's a bend towards believing that things will function in the future the way they functioned in the past. Everything will return to the predictable normal, and that will take us into the predictable future. Like we hear that from sources, high up sources, that the virus is a hoax or a diversion, and people just believe that. Just this week, people in my state, Florida, finally started wearing masks and keeping distance from each other. Just this week. Why is that? And why are people so hard-headed that they would actually believe this was some sort of hoax or diversion? And I'm not talking about the motivation of the people that are saying that. I'm talking about en masse, the people that are believing it. Because they don't believe science. They don't even believe their own eyes. But what they see is out of what they want to believe. And that's called, psychologists call that a normalcy bias. We see that manifest all over as recklessness and as endangerment. Churches in my state, one big one who went public, continued to meet, bussing in people, trying to get a platform, endangering people, and trying to politicize this into some sort of religious freedom of assembly issue. This is reckless. Why would a church whose whole mission is to take care of other people actually endanger people? Why would young people flock to beaches in my state in spring break, jam-packed tight, and think, well, we're strong, we want to blow off some steam, and nobody can tell us what to do. It's my right. Why are people driving into my state by the hundreds just because they're a little bored in their city home and they're tired of being under quarantine, so they're going to go someplace else and bring the virus with them? We were saying before this, it's no worse than a common cold, even before we looked at the scientific data. Why? Denial, looking through the lens of the normalcy bias. Entitlement, putting one's own rights over the community's. We simply demand life to go on as it always has, so we don't take in new information that challenges our beliefs. Our brains can actually take in billions of bits of information each day. But apparently, there are some things too hard for our brains to comprehend, like a new normal. Which is why we find ourselves saying all the time, I can't believe this is happening, and shaking our heads. Because we literally can't believe this is happening. That's normalcy bias, rearing its ugly head. And I will tell you, it's an enemy. It's extremely dangerous. Rebecca says it's so irresponsible of churches and religious institutions. It actually absolutely is. Absolutely is. And again, that's some kind of unbelievable disconnect, right? I don't even get it at all, except for to explain it by this way. The second thing we see is anger. Now, here's what we need to know: anger is not to be denied. It is a part of grief. And for any of us who have been in grief, we completely understand that anger is definitely a dynamic. Oh, Faith is saying information overload in a new landscape that doesn't give us a sense of shared reality. Absolutely. I completely concur. And sometimes, as we've been talking about when we did those mind teachings, when we get to that overload point, our brain needs to pick and choose because it can't assimilate it. I personally think that could be by design, but that's just me. We need to be careful what we expose ourselves so that we can judge what goes in. So, anger is at just about everything and everybody from the people I'm talking to. Personally, I have to keep this in check every single day. I can go from 0 to 100 with what's happening politically in this country, what's happening socioeconomically in this country, what's happening environmentally in this country. I mean, I hear one thing and, like the cartoon guy with the steam coming out of my ears, right? I am definitely in the process of dealing with anger in my grief right now. And we don't deny or discount it. Although we try not to feed that wolf, right? We have to try to, again, as we talked about before, definitely not take our eye off of injustice and have a focus on justice issues. But in a time of grief, anger can totally consume us. It's a very important issue to understand. I'm actually thinking about doing a whole time on anger because it's what I'm really, really hearing in people right now. Randall is saying if I look at this time as a period of growth and the change needed is somewhat easier to accept. Absolutely. That's where I'm at too, Randall. I co-sign that. Again, we're trying to see what is happening, see what we can learn. The next one is depression. Aaron is saying this is hard because denying anger is so Christian. Yeah, I think we need to have a whole week on anger because I think there's a such thing as righteous anger, obviously. So, depression, depression. And again, Jonah says these words: "Please just take my life away from me. It's better for me to be dead than alive." Isn't that interesting? This is Jonah who gets an assignment from the Lord. He doesn't like the assignment. And so he would rather die than complete this assignment. And the reason for that was he felt and sensed a complete lack of control with what was about to happen. And he had what we can kind of refer to as an anticipation of new griefs. Because what he was supposed to do is tell people that he couldn't stand this people group to repent. And he kind of figured, like, well, if they do, then God's not going to wipe them off the face of the planet. I want them wiped off the face of the planet, so I don't want to do this. And so when he knew that he had no choice, he just felt like he lost all control. And now he's anticipating new griefs. Anticipatory griefs are what a lot of us are dealing with right now. And that's why a lot of us are kind of depressed. We'll say things like our children aren't facing the same future as we did. We're going to lose everything. We're all going to get this virus anyway. I have a family member who is high risk. All these things are anticipating future griefs, anticipatory grief. And that leads to depression. Now, I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm talking about a deep sadness. And very much so, a deep sadness will always be part of grief. But here's the thing I want to throw out, and even in the face of dealing with anger, it can be rough. Look at the thing you're fearing. It won't swallow you. It's not an infinite black hole. In fact, when scientists measure our body, when we allow ourselves to think about the thing that we're really fearing, our physiological response only lasts in the normal sense about 90 seconds. We get a flash, and then our bodies calm down for the most part. But when we think about it all the time, or when we bury it in our bodies, we feel it there chronically. It festers. So, whatever you're fearful about, whatever you're anticipating may happen, look at it. Again, when we look at it, then we let it go. We look at it again, we let it go. Sadness is cyclical, just like the tides, just like the seasons. It comes, but it doesn't last forever. It comes and it goes. Let me know how that's working for you if you are doing that. Hey, Beth. Beth says, I'm so Jonah. Fine, I'll do it, but I'm not going to like it exactly, right? I really like Jonah for that reason. Hey, Stephanie, great to have you join us. In reading about grief, one writer said the anger was grief's handmaiden. Oh, that's good. Anger keeps you from feeling the pain and weakness and helplessness of grief. I so co-sign on that, Stephanie, and I love that. I love that phrase, grief's handmaiden. That's really, really good. It serves its purpose, absolutely, for sure. We have to know how to relate to it. The next one is bargaining. And Tiffany Di Bartolo says bargaining, an utterly useless stage. Neither God nor the universe ever bargains with anyone. Oh, I just love that, right? It's so true. But it's part of grief, and we all do it. If I can just fill in the blank, right? If I can just, everything will be okay. Now, this is huge in Western church thinking. Learn your lesson so that you can get through pain quickly and not have to do it again. Isn't that what we've all been told, right? So if something bad happens, God's trying to teach us something. So if we learn the lesson really quick, teach me, God, real quick so I can get out of this mess. Bargaining. Here's another one. I've heard it. I've seen it. I want to vomit. Here's another one. This virus is because we took God out of our schools. If we pray, God will heal our lands. Really? God sent a virus to China and Italy and Spain, wiped out all those people all around the globe till finally it comes to the United States. So we'll put the 10 Commandments on our chalkboards in our schools again? That's bargaining. And bargaining is simply this: it's to regain control. It's to get a hold of that old normal. And we'll say that we'll do anything in order to go back to that old normal and to have control. Which, hello, this is the whole point. We don't have control. And I think that that's what we're really trying to come to terms with right now. The fact that we have no control. Rebecca says Christians are so obsessed with prayer in the school. They really are, right? But yet you just wonder how much prayer in the home is going on there, right? The next thing is acceptance. Acceptance. The future will not look like the past. The future will not look like the past. Absolutely. There will be a new normal. But I don't even know what that new normal looks like. I don't think any of us do. However, I do know this. I don't want to go back to the familiar norm. Acceptance is actually where the power is. It's a kind of surrender, but it's not passive. You accept the situation and then you say, how do I make this work where I am today? We had a situation in a really beautiful way in my community today. I was working upstairs. Can you explain acceptance as one of the steps and not as the completion of the other steps? Can you move to another step like the others without feeling like you're regressing? And how? And how do you know if your prayers turned into bargaining? So I'm going to do Mikkel's prayer, Mikkel's question. If your prayers are an if and then, you could probably rest assured it's about bargaining. If I do this, then it's probably about bargaining. although there's a lot of gray in that. So, Aaron, acceptance is not the end. Acceptance is not the end. Remember when we had said before it's cyclical, all these 5 steps. Acceptance is not the end. So you may accept that possibly your job will never look the same again after this. Or you may accept that your job may not even be in existence anymore after this. And then you get depressed, and then you want to bargain, and then you get angry, and then you accept it. Okay. So then another situation comes. Maybe you realize that you have to leave your apartment because you can't afford to pay for it and you don't know where you're going to go and because you have no income. And so you get angry, you get depressed, and then you accept it. So you can go through all these kinds of patterns in a process of grief, but acceptance is never the end. And sometimes we accept it a little bit and then we find a new layer that's even deeper that we're like, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't quite accept that part of it's why it's very much a process. Okay. It's definitely not linear with this. So again, when we talk about this sense of acceptance and the future will not look like the past and we're in this new normal, and again, this is not surrender. This is not, or this is a kind of surrender. It's not a kind of passivity, right? You don't give up, you don't become a doormat. You surrender to the fact that you can't control things, but then you ask yourself, what can I do? So today I was working up here, and all of a sudden I hear all these horns beeping, and I thought, oh my gosh, did somebody get married? Please, somebody give me some outside stimulation for a second. Let me see something happy. So I run out my door to see if somebody got married. Maybe they did some kind of creative wedding thing, right? I run out my door and I see all these cars, like maybe about 15 or 20 cars, and they were all decorated. And there was one guy sitting on top of the first car and he was playing a trumpet, and they were all beeping their horn, and all the cars were decorated with all kinds of paint stuff and balloons, and they were saying outside of their windows, we love you, we miss you, and it was all over their cars. What happened was our local school teachers got together and figured out how they could support their kids in this neighborhood. And they put out an email to all the parents and the kids with safe distancing with their parents lined all the way down the streets that they said they were going to drive down and wave to their teachers who were driving their own cars. And so this is the new normal. But this was a way that these teachers they didn't lose their values. It's a surrender to the point that we're not in our classrooms. We can't connect with our kids. Our kids are at home, but we still want to let them know we care and we love them. So what can we do? See, that's a proactive acceptance. That's surrender in a healthy way. That's not passivity. Does that make sense, Aaron? Faith is saying might be some moisture in my eyes. Not gonna lie. Oh my gosh, I was crying for like 3 hours after I came back from seeing that. It was just the best thing. So yeah, that blessed assurance. Faith is saying she's been in this feeling of acceptance and the blessed assurance, which is the song that was really clicking with her, without being triggering to other people. Yeah, that's good. I'm finding that too, Faith. Because especially when other people are really in that sense of maybe they're really depressed or really angry, and they're going to get really pissed off at you if it seems like in some way you've accepted this in an unhealthy way. That's a really good point, Faith, and I'm sensing that with people too. Psalm 22, 1 and 2 says, if I raise my eyes to the hills, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, the maker of heaven and earth. Again, really important here, the language used. He cries out to the creative God, maker of heaven and earth, who he wants to come. Now, follow this because this is really cool. Creation is infinite possibilities forever, right? Its creation is not once and done. It's always evolving. It has infinite possibilities. And remember, we're co-creators with him. The psalmist could have cried out to another name like El Elyon, which is names of power, because he's talking about where will his help come from. His help comes from the creator of heaven and earth. Why wouldn't he cry out for the God of power to come and rescue him? He knows he doesn't need power to rescue him, because rescued by power doesn't really change things. It's like if you have a heart attack and you go to the hospital and they give you the paddles and they resuscitate you and now you are alive. You were rescued by power, but your problem remains. The same situation still exists that gave you the heart attack. So we don't just need to be pulled out of the fire, we need the fire to be put out. What the psalmist is actually asking for is this creative new normal. So he won't need a rescue. And for that, he needs the creative God, the one that fashions something magnificent out of a completely different substance, because the future needs to be remade. David Kessler got permission from the family of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross to add one more stage to the 5 stages of grief. And it's a really profound one. It's what Randall was saying before, finding meaning. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs reminds us that optimism is the belief that things are going to get better. Hope is the belief that we can make things better. Optimism is a passive virtue. Hope is an active one. It takes no courage to be an optimist, but it does need courage to hope. And this is, of course, like all of his writings, so profound. I'm actually going to post this so that you can read it. Sociologist Peter Berger calls hope a signal of transcendence. A signal of transcendence. This place where something beyond us penetrates the human situation. There's really nothing logical about hope. We're in, excuse my language, we're in a shit show right now. So there's really nothing logical about hope. It cannot be inferred from the past or the present. But it is through hope that we find meaning in the face of extreme suffering. Isaiah, who taught a defeated nation how to survive amidst despair, wrote, "Those who hope in God shall renew their strength." So I don't know what after this will look like. I don't even know if there'll be an after this, or whether this will be only the first pandemic of many in the world. But as Rumi said, seek the wisdom that will untie your knots. We have to let go. And we have to be in that place of in between where we've let go of the one swinging trapeze line, and we're reaching out for the other, for the new normal, knowing that we co-create that with Adonai. It's deep, but it's doable. We're going to close this time with the lighting of the Shabbos candles. And traditionally, the mothers of the home light the candles. And again, these candles are especially meaningful for us tonight because they symbolize the light of peace and of joy and of unity. And I want to encourage you tonight and tomorrow until sunset tomorrow night, maybe unplug. Maybe unplug. Maybe go through these 6 steps of grief and find out where you are. Maybe you're at 1 or 2 or 3 or all, or you're bouncing all over. But try to seek that wisdom so that you can untie that knot. Blessed are you, Lord our God. Give us eyes to see and a heart to feel a new normal. And through that, we choose hope. Shabbat Shalom. We're in this together. I love you all.